I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter.
All right, we're going to jump right on what it is that Scott was just saying, because I think that's actually the most important piece of the show is, what is the purpose of real estate? Go, Scott.
The purpose of real estate is to develop passive income, but the goal of everything, I don't want to own real estate just to own real estate. It's to live a great life. It's to take your skills, your passion, your purpose, and do it with the people you love and care about. And sometimes we get bogged down. We miss that the ultimate goal is what we want to hit. And we get bogged down on maybe the target of focusing on, numbers and assets and net worth and all these other things that really don't mean anything.
They really don't mean anything. And Scott, you were saying it so well that I surprised Scott, just so my listeners know. I surprised Scott and turned on the recording while he was talking. I'm like, so here we are. This is Christina Suter with Real Estate Breakthrough, and I welcome you guys to the show. Scott Saunders was just saying something so core to me in my life. Live a rich life. As a wealth advisor and a real estate investment advisor, I love that point of view. I live and breathe that point of view. And I truly try every time I run into a human being to go, what point of view do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a point of view of life is not a rich place to live, and therefore I must struggle? Or do you want to live in the point of view, this is a freaking abundant place to be, and we're going to use real estate to play in order to get somewhere, in order to get to what you just described?
Yeah, that's exactly it. 100%.
100%. So Scott, have you, in your history of growth, we all have our history of growth, did you start with a place where you didn't feel like you had that abundance, that you didn't understand that, and have you moved to that place? Tell us a little bit about your history.
I think we all evolve over time, right? We start off doing our thing, and then we go, I want to do a little more, and I want a little bit of this and that. So things have evolved. My background, I've been in the tax side of real estate for a long, long time, 37 years, doing something called a 1031 exchange, just a little tax strategy. Great little tool. Kind of used that personally and used it professionally. But really where it became more fun is when I set targets for myself of like, what do I want to accomplish with real estate? What do I want to get after? And what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to do in my life? What does it look like? What would be my ideal life? Where would I like to live? Where would I like to travel to? When I kind of took the time to start flushing that out, that's when things really changed for me. And I wish I would have started it earlier doing that, but it is what it is. And, anybody can start today, and you can sit down and dream out, what do I want to be? What does my ideal life look like? And then what do I have to do to get there? What do I have to change? Who do I need to listen to? Who's a mentor that's maybe a little farther down the road that I can kind of piggyback off of and draft off of? So, the things that we do in our masterminds, right? That we learn from other people and we get insights. Those are the types of things. So, I've done that better and better. I still sometimes, fall off the bus and need to get back to just doing the basics. We all do that a little bit. And that's really been the big difference.
Yeah, it's been amazing for me to move slowly but surely from a place of, you don't know my history at all, but from a place of like, I didn't want to be on this planet. Like, this place sucked, right? To, hey, you know what? Let's freaking play. Like, let's have fun. Let's engage. Let's be focused on what it means to have a meaningful life. I say to a lot of my students, if you want a meaningful life, you need to bring meaning to your life. And people reserve meaning inside themselves. Oh, I don't want love to be meaningful. It might get hurt. I don't want to care about the business. I don't want to, be too focused one place or another, because what if it falls apart, right? I don't want to commit, because what if it becomes a nothing? And it's like, well, you're kind of like setting it up to not be very meaningful for you if you're constantly reserving who you are in relationship to that. And I'm thinking of a Katy Perry song about, like, what was it? I don't remember the name of the song, but I couldn't stand for anything, so I fell for everything is the line, right?
Okay.
In the song, right? Because I didn't stand for anything, I fell for everything. But so you were an expert in 1031 exchanges, and you are still very much an expert in 1031 exchanges, but I think you've got a newer thing going, which is wealth outside Wall Street. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and why you found that valuable for the people you work with?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's what I discovered myself. So I kind of stumbled into this group a few years ago, engaged in some of the tactics, and really jumped in with both feet and started getting after it. So the group teaches about accomplishing financial freedom within 10 years or less. That's kind of the mantra, and how to do that. So real estate is a piece of that. And so within that, I started buying assets, different markets, and started building a real estate portfolio in different places, mainly single family, a few other types of assets, but mainly that focused on tax strategy, really getting into the tax code. And instead of being intimidated by the tax code, how to use it proactively, how to take advantage of all these tax incentives and taking advantage and then allocating my capital to the incentives Congress put in place and then taking advantage of those tax advantages. And then the next part was a unique tool called an overfunded high cash value life insurance policy, which is just another tool. It's another financial tool that can be used in conjunction. And within that group and that community, there are literally hundreds, thousands of people that have actually stepped into this and are now pursuing their dreams and their financial freedom. And I'll tell you, Christina, that's the fun part for me. I see you get lit up seeing potential in life now and living a rich life. And, that's my focus, stepping into financial freedom today, not kicking the can down the road to some retirement, not necessarily, hoping that it'll work out, but setting some targets and then getting after it and having a plan that you can implement. But the fun part is actually stepping into that plan and doing those things. What do I do when I hit X goal? Well, I want to vacation to these places with my kids and do those things. That for me has been the fun part of the journey, is doing the stuff that I enjoy doing with the people that I enjoy doing it with. And that kind of opens up a whole world of abundance and possibilities.
It does. So tell us a little bit about how you guys stack that, because you're merging life insurance policies with the capacity to grow wealth. And there's a key here that I think is important that people understand. So why don't you tell about how you stack it when you talk about wealth outside of Wall Street, and what's your guys' process, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would say one way to stack it is you learn to use good leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So a life insurance policy is just looked at as kind of a warehouse of capital, of cash. So it's a place you make money wherever you make it, you pay the taxes on it, and then you keep it in this overfunded high cash value life insurance policy where it now grows. And so this is a unique policy. Basically it's going to be something where you're with a mutual company that has some dividends, but let's say 5-6% return,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a safe warehouse. So the way we use it is you first fund that, then you borrow from that policy. So the money still is staying there. You borrow against it and you go use that as a down payment on a piece of real estate. So right off the bat, I get leverage. I get $1 working in two places,
Mm-hmm.
which now allows me to take advantage of economic forces. Then I supercharge it and I use the bank's money, right? So now I put down 20%. The bank gives me a loan for the other 80%. So I've got $1 working two places.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got a 4-to-1 from the bank. Then I'm going to use the tax code where now I get the tax code working to my benefit. Then I'm going to have a tenant in there paying my mortgage and my insurance and my property taxes. So now that tenant's working for me. So all of a sudden, I've now harnessed a few different systems. I've used the life insurance system, the
Mm-hmm.
lending and banking system,
Mm-hmm.
the US tax code, and I'm using tenants who I provide clean, safe, affordable housing, nice homes, but they're now paying rent that they're going to pay to somebody and they're paying it to me. Those factors, when they're all put together, what they do is they allow me to get a better return, an outsized return that allows me to keep ahead of inflationary forces. And so you do that over time, rinse and repeat it. Pick up one asset here, buy another one, kind of repeat the process. And over time, you can build a portfolio of real estate assets that now have all these economic forces that work for me. instead of me fighting against them. And boy, Christina, that's one thing that I guess inspires me is, how do we give hope to people? So many people out there struggling against, inflationary forces and the dollar being devalued and all these things that are a struggle. Being able to say, hey, here's a pathway that offers hope and potential that anybody could step into. You don't need to be a Warren Buffett to buy little single family homes in the Midwest. You don't have to be
No.
Ken McElroy, who we know, who buys, $100 million apartment complexes. It's a pretty narrow skill set. But to buy a single family home in Indiana, that's not that hard if you partner with the right people. So that's kind of the process, and it's exciting for me to be involved in doing that. Honestly, it fires me up. I literally today there was somebody that was in our community that kind of drifted away, a doctor, and he wants to get back in because he's like, I miss the community and I miss the energy and having the focus and to be around like-minded people that are all positive, that are going somewhere, that are looking at potential. Like, sign me up for that. Those are my people.
Scott, and you said it so well, and you just focused on the process of stacking the life insurance policy that is really focused. I call it investment grade. I don't know what the right terminology is, but basically heavily weighted. I started mine 10 years ago, by the way. I'm very happy with it because it was a 10 pay. So I'm very happy with it. I did have to move it. I had to 1035 it, right, from one place to another. So my 10 pay turned into like a 14 pay or something in the process. But it's a heavily funded life insurance policy that I can borrow against. I can use that borrowing as a down payment on a single family, which I do have. I have several in Indianapolis. And then I'm able to have my tenant pay my, leverage it, right? So that's effectively my down payment is leveraged. Effectively, the rest of the purchase price is leveraged, right? But I'm able to then have my tenant pay the property tax, insurance, and the mortgage. And I have an appreciating asset over here called my real estate. And I have this policy over here that is also still building its dividends. So that's the double use of the dollar. And by the way, if I'm an idiot and I pass away, I still have my life insurance policy that's going to be paying out to my heirs. So it's just, to me, I love it because it does stack so many returns on top of themselves. And for me, because I've had it for so many years, the dividend itself can pay the interest rate, right, on my borrowed money. So I'm not asking the property to pay 100% of that financing. I actually have a dividend that's actually capable of covering my expense against my loan.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And that's something that's been around. Life insurance isn't new, right? It's been around for hundreds of years, and you're dealing with institutions that are kind of like, they got a long time horizon. When they invest, I was at a firm that we work with in Indiana, One America, and we met with the CFO and they talked about their investment philosophy. They're looking decades with their investments. So they're looking for really stable investments. So it's pretty cool. And, I'll tell you, I teach this concept called an equity mill, but basically how, when you get to retirement, you can tap into the cash value in that insurance. So over time, that'll go up. And then your real estate goes up. And so what you do is you harvest out of your life insurance policy. You basically borrow against your cash value. Then you take your real estate portfolio, which over time goes up, you harvest it through a cash out refi, and now you've got two streams of tax-free income. Who doesn't want in retirement to have some sources of tax-free income that they control, that are within their sphere of influence? Compare that to Wall Street. Wall Street, you get X amount of money at retirement and you draw it down under a 4% model, supposedly, and you hope that you have enough there and that inflation doesn't whack you, that you can hang on. So that's kind of like what I call a drawdown, the opposite of abundance. This one over here is a model of these two assets that are both increasing in value and that you actually have control of. So it gives more possibilities, right? It gives people more options in life and for retirement, for their life. And then certainly, at my stage of life with you, I look at legacy planning and what am I passing on? And it helps with those types of things as you're looking 2-3 generations down the road. What am I setting in place for my great grandchildren that I'll never see, to maybe give them a shot at some opportunities that they may not have otherwise had? So that's the way I look at it.
No, and it is because I'm in my late 50s. So I just crossed to 57. So I now consider myself in my late 50s. Thank you very much. Still doing quite well, must say. Just for pointing that out. No, but the point is that now I really am focused on legacy. I'm focused on what am I going to leave my daughter? What am I leaving my grandchildren? I have a life insurance policy on my daughter, which I also got 10 years ago. So that's the only legal form of generation skipping I can find is literally putting it on my daughter so it goes to my grandchildren. And I have that in place. And I'm like, okay, I'm buying my last round or so of really doubling down on real estate and multifamilies and what is that going to be in 20 years? That's my focus. What is this property going to be in 20 years? Because that's what I'm building, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's great that you've got that long range viewpoint of looking at. We're in a country where housing is becoming increasingly not affordable,
Yes.
for our kids. And it's a challenge. I don't love that dynamic. I like the way it used to be, but the reality is that we're coming into more of a renter nation, and some are going to own assets and others are going to struggle. So to the extent that we can set up our kids and grandkids with some assets,
There's some assets.
we give them some great opportunities and advantages that if they're wise about it and they learn the things that we've learned the hard way, they maybe can, grow it and nurture it along a little bit.
Yeah, I have I call her my spiritual daughter because she's not my biological daughter, but I feel very much like she is my daughter to me. And we're having a conversation. She's, been married for a couple of years, and she's like, "Oh, my parents inherited a condo, but they never went beyond that condo. They never built themselves beyond the condo they inherited." And so her thoughts are like, "How could I move beyond?" Right? Like she's like, "Oh, I feel like my husband and I are almost like backwards because we don't have any assets of our own. We just barely bought our first home and we're trying to pay it off. And I feel like we're struggling and we're behind." And I'm like, no. It's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And you're supposed to be buying that first asset. You're supposed to be struggling the next 5 to 10 years to get some equity built in it, to pay it down, to be able to look back and go, "Oh, wait a minute, I have a home. I can buy another one." Right? And then in 5 to 10 years, as their jobs progress, I can buy another one. And it's like, that's beautiful. Now you've got two. And so that building of being willing to build, right, is so crucial. And not just going, "Oh, well, maybe I don't know how to develop my own sense of wealth or my own sense of abundance." It's like, no. It's really in the decision in your brain that you're not going to just stop, that you're going to embrace.
I
Go.
love that. I love that with the decision, right? Because a lot of it is your mindset. Mindset is, what can I do? If I want to do these things, what do I have to do now to have those things in the future? What are the potential things? But it's a mindset. It's a way of looking at the world of saying, what do I want? And then what do I need to do to get what I want? And then the other one is having confidence in yourself that you can learn, read, watch on YouTube, find smart people in a community and learn from them. Most people are eager to share, kind of things they've learned through the school of hard knocks. They're eager to share that with other people and help people out.
You and I belong to a mastermind together. That's how we ran into each other. But that's because that mastermind is about cultivating people who do want to learn and people who want to share. Like, we want to share. We were in the second half of our careers and we have a lot that we're happy to teach and we're happy to share. And I share it professionally as a wealth advisor, as a registered investment advisor. I share that knowledge professionally, intentionally, because it's joyful for me. Right? So, I have my own portfolio, and that is the bulk of my money comes from my diversified portfolio, which I've been building for 35 years, and I've been at it for a while. Right? And so that is where, but to be able to share, and I think it's part of becoming an elder in the community or becoming a king or a queen in the community, right? Is that willingness to share. And I'm doubling down on this because for those young people who are listening and are like, "Oh, I don't want to bug people." It's like, no, it's the opposite way. The opposite is true. If you're a young person, you're looking to build, or you're new to real estate, regardless of your age, there are so many out there who want to share with you, coach you, mentor you, love you, encourage you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, Christina, if I would say a mistake I made is I didn't really look for mentors or people around me sooner, right? I just kind of did my own deal and used my own smarts, my whatever. And I don't know if that was narrow-minded or being stubborn or whatever you want to call it, or a combination of things. But I've learned as I get a little older and wiser that people are eager to share, especially if
Mhm.
somebody's sincere and wants to implement it. So, just a takeaway for the audience is find somebody in your circle that is farther along than you and ask them. It could be in your church or place of worship. It could be
Mhm.
an employee that's ahead of you. It could be the retired person. But a lot of people want to do that, and they would love nothing more than to take someone under their wings and pass on some nuggets of wisdom that can really help others get ahead.
Okay, that being said, Scott, let's have you pass on some nuggets of wisdom. I'm going to change the subject. So you truly have this deep history in 1031 exchanges, in tax consequences, tax shelters. So I believe you're delivering a talk to the topic is the top 1%. What are some tax strategies for the top 1%? And you're delivering it where? Let's announce that and let's get some of those tips.
Yeah, it's a talk that I'm doing down in Phoenix next month. You asked me for the exact dates. It's Main Street 360.
Main Street
Mark
360.
Kohler is
Okay.
the co-host of that. If you Google him, you'll find that. And that's a talk talking about tax strategies for the 1%, of what are things that you can do to take advantage of these incentives in the tax code, use them to your advantage. And so there's a panel of us. One person's an energy person, so oil and gas. So I'm sure he'll be talking about IDC credits, and there are a lot of things that are in the tax code that favor energy production. So any tax code is going to
Mm.
favor energy production, housing, and typically food. Those are very common
Okay.
around all economies. And so in America, real estate is a favored asset class. And we happen to be in an environment, we had some new tax laws that got passed this summer that
Mhm.
are very favorable to real estate. So they're great. In fact, I would tell everybody we're in the best time, in my opinion, for investing because we've got all these incentives in the code. It's never been a better time than now. And I think sometimes things change, political winds come and ebb and flow,
They
things
do.
go.
They do.
So take advantage of this season in the code. So I think you asked me kind of what
Mhm.
you were going to ask me kind of what the what is. What are some of the
Yeah,
strategies, right?
exactly. Give us some real strategies here. Come on, fess
All
up,
right.
babe.
Fess up. I'll give you. Here's one that's super simple.
Okay, cool.
You want to operate, if in the case of a real estate business, you want to operate your business like a business. And if you do that, you unlock all these expenses that are personal expenses that can now become legitimate, ordinary, and necessary business expenses. So, one is just setting up the right structures. And I won't go into the weeds on that, but there's some basic structures you do. But now you convert things into a business expense. And I'll give you a case in point. I'm here in the basement of my house. So I've got a basement,
Mhm.
a main level, and an upper level. One third of my house is used for business.
Mhm.
I've got an office down here to manage my real estate portfolio. My daughter has a desk. Then I've got this room where I do podcasts and stuff. I'm depreciating a third of my house.
Mhm.
And when I go to sell it, I'll use one part of the tax code, section 1031, to
Mhm.
exchange the equity in my basement for another investment. Then I'll use another tax code provision, section 121, on my upper two floors. And then this unlocks, I'm able to write off expenses of my house. One third of my heating, my air conditioning,
Mhm.
my housekeeper, my gardener. One third of that is a legitimate business expense for my business office. So that's not something really exotic, but it allows me to reclassify income in that way. So that's an easy one.
Mhm.
There are ways to pay your kids tax free if you own a business, to bring them in and pay them. Another great strategy. So, I mean, there's a long list of
You
things
gotta
in
give me
real
one more.
estate. We
Give me
have,
one more, Scott. Give me one more.
well, here's the one.
Give me one
I
more.
love in the tax code, you got bonus depreciation, which
Great.
allows you to write it off. So with real
Mhm.
estate, that's great. It's also good for business owners. You can write off business assets. I just read that the sale of private jets is going through the roof because a lot of people are buying private jets for the bonus depreciation, for the write off with it.
Oh,
So a lot of
interesting.
people that have these assets, whether it's a jet or a luxury yacht, they make them a legitimate business expense first, take advantage of that tax break, and then they've got some personal use associated with it. So I would say for anybody listening, look for opportunities. I'll share a couple nuggets.
Okay.
Tom Wheelwright is a great CPA. He writes Tax-Free Wealth. He's got another book called 7 Ways the Government Will Pay You to Invest, or something like that. But look for his books. He's great. And it just kind of gives you an idea of the mindset. And then jump on YouTubes of some people like that and just start listening. And I think you'll find that there are a lot more opportunities. That the whole tax code is really, really thick. The first 10, 15 pages are the tax tables where we have a percentage of our income. The other 70 some thousand pages are opportunities for the rest of us that own and operate businesses to take advantage of the incentives. So focus your time on that other bulk of it. And then I would say to the extent you can do that, it gives you more money in your pocket that you can now redeploy into other investments. And that's the way you start building cash flow and net worth, is by redeploying capital like that.
It makes a lot of sense. And I love Tom Wheelwright, Tax-Free Wealth. Tom Wheelwright is literally, that's his website. The other person I love is Amanda Hahn at Keystone Investments. And she does a lot of Instagram. So for those of you that want like Instagram stuff, she's a great place as well. Okay, that being said, I'm going to change the subject one more time. So
You bet.
one of the things that I prepared you for and said was it takes, having invested for 35 years and being a coach for people who are either new to investing or have been investing, I have had an opportunity to see things go right and things go wrong. And when they go wrong, everything gets really tense and everybody starts doubling back. I have a friend of mine right now. We just had a phone call the other day about, last year went wrong, right? There was a suit, there's this stuff going on. And this lady is like, I don't even know how I have the strength to continue to move forward as a real estate professional. And there are those moments when it really hits you and you need that grit. So tell us about a story and tell us about that grit, because you've been at it for a while.
Well, just
I'm
one
calling you
story.
old, Scott. I just called you old. Straight up. I just called you old. Live with it.
You did. You know what you have to decide. You did call me old. I appreciate it. I'm older than you. So
Well, see, there you go.
So stuff does go wrong. So
Right.
number one, you've got to have reserves. So if you're going to invest in anything, real estate or anything else, keep some reserves, some capital, because stuff happens. I'll tell you, it seems like a lot of my stuff happens when I go out of the country. So I was traveling with my kids. We were going to go do something awesome. We were going to swim with the whale sharks. Have you ever heard of that? You do it off of Mexico.
Yeah.
So we did that. And I was there, and we're in a condo next to the beach. And I get the phone call. And basically, it was a foundation of one of my properties in Cleveland. The basement was made of brick. Long story short, I paid cash for this asset,
Okay.
and it was not stable. And it was going to take better part of $30,000 to refortify it and fix it up. And I get the phone call, the property manager saying, I can't manage it. This thing's going to collapse. And I'm debating, do I just let it collapse and move on, or do I throw money into it? What do I do? I decided to throw money into it and fix it up and do the right thing. But that happens. And it's at times like that where you just want to prepare financially. And then again, if you're with people that have been through it, I mean, think of the people we know in the commercial space. They have expensive problems, probably just more zeros on the problems and more zeros on the wins. But being around people that do that, you realize, like, you know what? It's just part of the game. It's part of owning an asset. It's part of being an investor, is you just deal with higher quality problems. And sometimes they're a lot more expensive. And so you get the big win when you kill it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get the gut punch, right, it also has some zeros in it. And that's just part of the process. And if you're going to run with the big boys and swim with the big fish, big problems come along sometimes. And that's just part of the process. And the more you can embrace them and just go, you know what, it's just part of the process. I know what the long range, I know what real estate does long term. It keeps up with inflation. I'm paying down my debt. I'm building up equity. I've got all these forces working for me. I just need to deal with the problem ahead of me as cost effectively and, deal with it the right way, be responsible, address it, solve it, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah. To give you an example, I'll tell another story real quick. So I wasn't traveling. I wasn't traveling going with the whale sharks. That isn't what happened. It was just a regular, everyday, normal day in my life. And I get this phone call from my property manager saying, oh, by the way, we have now discovered a 3-week-old hot water drip, or, leak, hot water leak in your new building that you have. And because it's been going for 3 weeks, the hot water heater has now completely burned out and is spewing water out of the base of the hot water heater, and your basement is completely flooded. So not only do I have a leak that we're now having to fix up above that involves a lot of drywall that now has to be fixed, I also have a flood in the basement that also needs to be fixed. And thank goodness he has a very good plumber. And so the plumber was very quick to get back to me and have this whole conversation about, we're draining the basement right now. We've turned off the hot water to the building. Here's what we suggest. And yes, 100 gallons isn't nearly enough to serve a building of this size. And I have to confess, $23,000 later, I now have 3 Instahots that are, daisy chained so we can serve the entire building and everybody can have hot water. But it did take a day and a half to solve that problem, and $23,000. So you want to have some reserves in your account, like you talked about, just being prepared for if we're going to buy buildings that allow us to have multiple tenants pay down our mortgage, multiple tenants help us pay down the loan, the principal, the expenses of the building, and therefore we get to keep all the appreciation and some cash flow. You're going to want to keep some of that cash flow for these type of problems, and you're going to want to have that inner grit to not go, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I'm sorry I ever bought real estate. And it's like, no. Like, part of how you have real estate grow is by solving problems. It's the problem solver in us that can be one of our most valuable assets.
Absolutely. And the problems come up. You don't know. Sometimes they're little baby problems. Sometimes they're bigger. They happen. And, I find when you've got more assets, the problems that I deal with that I think are nothing to somebody else are like, oh, how is that? That was a big deal. And to me, it's a nothing burger. It's like, oh, I've dealt with that a bunch of times. It's nothing. And I'm sure if I talk to somebody in the commercial space, they would look at my big problems as a nothing burger to them. They're like, oh, I've been there, done that. That's nothing. You just do this, and that. So it all evolves, and it's just all part of growing and becoming a better investor and, a better person, right? You just get better and you're like, okay, I learned, now I know what I need to do next time. In my case, I'll buy newer buildings so I don't have to deal with that foundation problem, right? I can solve that.
Yeah, and maybe not in Cleveland. That's my personal opinion. But moving on. So, I love that. For me, mindset is the beginning and the end of using real estate to break through to your financial freedom and your abundance. And mindset is where abundance exists. So you might as well do that inner work so that abundance becomes your point of view, not just an external representation, but an internal representation. How do you want to live? How do you want your life to feel? Comes from your thinking, not just your bank account. So that's my last little tick. So you have 2 different businesses that people can get a hold of you through, Scott. So why don't you give us that information? How can they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you either about 1031 exchanges and taxes, or whether they want to talk to you about this amazing layered platform that you've created and people being able to generate wealth?
Yeah. So to get a hold of me, super simple. I'm Coach Scott at wealthoutsidewallstreet.com. So that's the easy way. Find me there. I check that email. So it's Coach Scott at wealthoutsidewallstreet.com. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody about anything real estate, tax, or anything along those lines. And that's kind of my wheelhouse.
Beautiful. Thank you, Scott, so much for being on the show. So appreciate it. This is Christina Suter with Real Estate Breakthrough. How can you use real estate to break through to your financial freedom? We post every 2 weeks. I think Vina Jetty is my next guest, so keep a lookout for her. She's a great fireball to talk with, so I'm looking forward to that show, and you'll find us on multiple different platforms. Thank you so much.